Hi, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about understanding pay stubs. Let's dive right in. A pay stub is a document that tells you exactly how much you got paid and any money that was removed from your paycheck to pay for things like taxes or benefits or anything like that. It allows you to verify that your pay is accurate. There is a thing called wage theft, and this is a crime committed by employers when they intentionally underpay their employees. It's a real problem. In some industries, a bigger problem than in others. All right, so information on a pay stub. A pay stub contains tons of information. The first thing we're going to talk about are things called deductions and withholdings. Sometimes companies use this word withholdings instead of deductions, or they might separate them in two categories. Basically, these are all things that are subtracted from your pay. So there are things like taxes, health insurance, retirement accounts, donations, anything that's coming out of your pay by your employer. One of the really common ones is called FICA. You'll see this FICA. This is a tax that pays for Social Security and Medicare. We'll talk later in the course about what those two things are in depth, but basically Medicare is health care for people over 65 in retirement and for some people with disabilities that were younger. And Social Security is a retirement account funded by the government. So you pay into it, and then when you get to 65, 67, whatever the age is, you can start collecting that money back. It's not a lot of money, but this is what you're paying for. You pay for it your entire working life. The income section, it should really clearly list the number of hours worked and your pay for those hours. If you had overtime, it'll show as a separate category, a separate line item, and say overtime with a different rate. If you're a salaried employee, you won't see the rates on there usually, but you'll see exactly how much you earned that pay period. YTD refers to year to date. This tells you how much has been the amount for the entire year up to that date. So if it's March, it's going to include anything that happened in January, February, and March. So up to that date. Gross. This indicates the amount of money you've earned before any deductions or withholdings come out of it. So this is like the raw money you earned, not the money you're going to take home with you. Net pay, or also known as take-home pay, this amount is what you get paid. This is the money you get to take home and spend on whatever you want. It's the difference between your gross minus the deductions and withholdings. That's your net pay. Direct deposit. This indicates that your money is being electronically deposited into your account. It's really nice. Employers love it. Employees tend to love it. It makes life easier on employers. They don't have to print out paper checks and hand them to you, replace those checks when they get lost. It just makes life a lot easier. All right, let's start using this pay stub we have on the right here and find some stuff. So go through this pay stub, pause the video, go through this pay stub. I know it's a little blurry. I could not get a really good copy. I apologize. And try and find these four things and then hit play when you're ready to go. All right, so I'm assuming we're back. Let's go ahead and go through some of these. Hopefully you found them all. So what was John's gross earnings? Gross earnings is what you get paid. So right here's his gross earnings. $12 an hour is the rate. Worked for 40 hours. That means you've made $480 right there. So I'm going to come over here and put the 480 right here. What was John's net pay for this week? Okay, so net pay means after deductions and withholdings. So we can come down here and just search around. So our total pay was 480. Our deductions was 126.94, it looks like, leaving this much money that we get to take home with us, 353.06. So 353.06. All right. Now, how many hours did John work? So we come over here and we find, okay, right here is the hours on the pay stub. And so John worked 40 hours. Now this next one's asking us how much money does John take home for each hour of work? You might say, well, look, it's right here, 12 hours. Well, that's how much John gets paid but some of his money is lost to things he can't control, like to taxes and stuff. So we're really curious, how much money do you make an hour of take-home pay, not of gross pay? So to do this, we got to figure out what numbers we need. We need this number here. This is the net pay, 353.06, and he earned that in 40 hours. So the question is, what do we do with those two numbers? Well, the good news is you don't have to remember. I'm going to show you in this course some techniques for doing math as an adult when you don't remember how to do the math. So the nice thing is there's only really 5 things we can do with these numbers. We can add them together, we can subtract them, we can multiply them, we can divide them, and then we can also switch them and divide them the other way. Remember, division is different depending on which one comes first. So we can do all 5 of those things, and one of them will result in a reasonable answer. The other will be crazy. So the first thing to think about is, what are we looking for and what's a reasonable answer? Well, we're wondering how much he takes home for each hour of work. Well, we know he takes home $12 an hour, or he didn't take home, he earns $12 an hour, but we know he's going to lose some money to deductions. So we expect our hourly rate of take-home pay to be a little bit less than the $12. How much less, we don't know, but less. All right. So then let's just try some stuff. So we don't know what to do next, we can say, okay, well, let's try adding the numbers. So if I add 40 and 353, I get 393.06. So I get 393.06. And that would be for each hour of work. And that's not reasonable. He's not making $393 an hour. That's not working. All right, so addition was wrong. Don't worry about that. It's wrong. Like, that's a good thing to know now. What if we subtract them? So if we take 353.06 minus 40, we get 313.06. Again, he's not making $300 an hour. That's the wrong way of doing it as well. Next thing I'm going to try to do is multiply them. So I take 40 times 353.06, and I get $14,000. Again, he's not making $14,000 an hour. That's unreasonable. Multiplication is out. So I'm not giving up though. I'm just going to keep going. I've got 3 of the 5 things down. I'm more than halfway there. So I'm going to try dividing. So I'm going to take 40 divided by 353.06 equals, this one's 0.11. So that's 11 cents an hour. That's less than the $12, but that's not reasonable either. No one would work for 11 cents an hour. It would take you like 20 hours to make enough money for a soda. No one's doing that. But remember, I can also divide the other way. So I'm going to start with the 353.06 divided by 40. And I end up with something that says 8.83. And I'm going to put it to 2 decimal places because it's money. We always go to 2 decimal places. We never go to 1 or 3. Always 2. Even if that's the last thing, if this was a 0 here, that would be fine. I'd put a 0, 8.80. So this number kind of makes sense. $8.83 an hour. So this is per hour. This is his take-home pay. So every hour he works, he doesn't actually take home $12. He only takes home $8.83 per hour. The other $3.20 or $3.17 is going to taxes and withholdings and deductions. Things are coming out of his pay. All right, awesome. That's an important number to have. This number can be really motivating, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, so on the previous slide, we found that John's pay is $8.83 an hour. That's his take-home pay. Now the question is, we can start thinking of our purchases, not in terms of how much they cost us in money, but how much they cost us in time. And that can be a real motivator. So if John wants to buy a new place, for example, if you go to work in the morning and you stop and grab a coffee and a muffin, and it's about $8, now you know your first hour of work is going to pay for that muffin and coffee. So when you get to work, you can set your timer for an hour. And then when that timer goes off, you can think, wow, was that amount of time I just worked worth that coffee and muffin? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's just a new way of thinking about it. All right, for this one, we want to find, John, how long he has to work to pay for a $550 PlayStation. So again, you don't have to know how to do this. There's only 5 things we can do. Add, subtract, multiply, divide, flip them, and divide the other way. And we're going to try to figure out like what's a reasonable number here. Well, at $8 an hour to make $500, you're going to have to work a lot of hours, but not thousands of hours, but a big chunk of hours. So let's see if we can't find this thing. So if we subtract the two, we get 883 minus 550, we get 441.17. And 441 seems like, seems like a lot of hours to work for a PlayStation of 550. So let's hold on to that one, but it feels unreasonable. If we add them, we get 558.83, 558 hours. In fact, let me just get rid of the 17 here. We'll just say 441, 558. This is these are way too high. Like there's no way you have to work 400 hours to make this. So adding and subtracting didn't work. Great, no problems. What if we multiply? So we take 550 times 8.83, and that's 4,856 hours. Again, that's unreasonable. So let's try dividing. Let's go 883 divided by 550, and we get 0.016. So 0.02 hours, which is like 3 seconds. And so that doesn't seem reasonable either. That's too small. So let's try dividing the other way. Let's start with the 550 divided by 8.83. And that ends up being 62.3 hours of work. And of all the things we did, so the work here we did, the final thing we did was 550 hours divided by $8.83. And this is dollars here, and this is per hour. And that ended up giving us this, 62.3. So when we play around with these numbers, we can get to a reasonable number. Now, as you're thinking about this, that's a lot of hours. You might be like, that seems really high, but that is the right one. It's more reasonable than any others we come up with, so it must be the right answer. And you're right, that's a lot of hours. That might be motivating for John to think, hey, you know what? Working for a week and a half for a PlayStation is worth it, not worth it. Your choice is always. All right. Let's try one more. John works for really far from home and drives to work each day. He buys gas of $35.50 each week. He also stops for a coffee and breakfast sandwich each morning for about $6. How many hours does John work each day to pay for his gas and breakfast? Ooh, this one's going to be tricky. I'll give you pause the video here and see if you can't work through this. All right, so here, let's do this thing. So one thing I notice here is that we want for each day how much he pays for gas, and this is each week. So the first thing we need to do is convert this gas number into how much he pays for gas each day. So let's come down here and I'm going to write some stuff down. So we have $35.50, and that is per week. So that slash mark there means per. So $35.50 per week, WK. And let's assume that he drives to work 5 days a week. I know we're making some assumptions here. If you chose 7 when you were doing your work, totally fine. You'll get a little bit different answers, but there's no, we don't know how many days a week it goes, so we're just guessing here. So 5 days. Here are the two numbers I want to work with. And again, I can only do this one of 5 ways. So if I add these numbers, I get $40.50 per day of gas. Well, that doesn't make sense because that would be more than he spends all week. He can't spend that in a day. If I subtract them, I get $30. If he's spending $30 a day, he's going to spend way more than $35 in a week. So that doesn't make any sense. If I divide them, let's try that. Let's try $35.50 divided by 5. Dividing's been pretty useful for us. And we get 7.1 as the answer. So 7.1. And I need to add a 0 there because we're talking about money. So we're going to put a $7.10. Now this makes sense. So I'm going to write down my work real quick because I want to always show my work. So $35.50 divided by 5 equals 710 in gas each day. So I want to explain the meaning of my numbers. So here, $7.10 in gas each day is what he's spending. He's also spending about $6 on coffee and breakfast and stuff. So, okay, so I've got $6 down here as well. And I want to think about how I want to bring these numbers together. If I add them, I get like $13. And that feels right. Yeah, that feels right. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive. So I'm going to just add these numbers together, and I'm going to get $13.10 here. And this is each day. For breakfast and gas. All right, so now the question is how many hours does it take him each day to make up for his gas and his breakfast routine? We know from before that he is making $8.83 an hour. And you might remember from the last slide that dividing these two into making makes sense. Now, if he makes $8.83 an hour, the answer we expect is more than an hour, but not a lot more than an hour because it's $13 here. So we don't expect a huge number, something in that 1 to 2 range, between 1 and 2 hours. All right, so let's just try it real quick. So I'm going to take 1310 divided by 8.83, and I'm going to get 1.4, yeah, so 1.5-ish hours. So I'm going to write my work down here. So I did 1310. And again, I was just trying stuff I remembered from before. 883. And that ends up being 1.5 hours. Whoops. To pay for morning. So that means after he gets to work, he clocks in, and the next 1.5 hours is money he's already spent on gas and breakfast. It's already burned up. So it's another way to think about our spending. And I think that might be it. Oh, nope, net worth. We got a few more things. I apologize. So net worth is a concept that we'll be talking about. It is, let me turn the pen off. Liabilities are things or money you owe. So anything like car loans, mortgages, personal loans, student loans, all of that money, or if you owe someone some money, that's called a liability. It works against you. Assets are anything you own that has monetary value that you could sell on the open market, as well as any money that you have in the bank, things like cars and houses, retirement accounts, anything that has value. The net worth is a difference between your liabilities and assets. So a positive net worth, so you take what you own and subtract away the money you owe. The way I think of it is, if you were to die today, how much money would be left over after they sold everything you had and then paid off all your debt? Would there be some money left over for an inheritance? Then you have a positive net worth, meaning your assets, the things you own, have more value than the money you owe on them. A negative net worth is a bad place to be. It means you owe more money than the things you own. So you're in debt at that point. It can at times be an okay place to be as you're working towards some longer goals, but typically a negative net worth is problematic. Okay? And that's the idea of net worth. It gives you a really quick understanding of where your financial health is. Do you have a $300,000 net worth? Meaning that all the things you own, your house and everything, is more than the money you owe on other things. All right, well, that's it for this one. I know it's been a long one. I apologize. Hang in there. Have a great day.